So today we've got Kelly Peters, and she is Director of Marketing at Tomorrow.io. Megan Keeney Anderson, she's VP of Marketing at Jasper, and Brigitte Racine, and she is CEO of Lucita. So I'm going to hand it over to Bettina, and she is going to moderate our panel.
Thank you, Mel. Hello, everyone. Welcome. In case you only just joined, let us know where you're dialing in from. Put your LinkedIn in the chat, and we're going to get started with our panel questions. So, yeah, I'm Bettina Grab. I'm partner and chief growth officer here at Alder. Kelly, feel free to share your slides.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks so much. So my name is Kelly Peters. I am Director of Marketing at Tomorrow.io. So excited to be here with you all talking about this very specific topic for me, my everyday life, AI and climate tech. So yeah, a little bit about Tomorrow.io before we dive into the content here. We are the world's leading weather intelligence and climate adaptation platform. We are really pushing the next generation of weather forecasting in the world. So what that means is that our platform tells companies like JetBlue, Uber, the US Air Force, Ford, really across all industries, how the weather will impact them and provides recommended action for them to adapt before it's too late. Most recently, we launched the world's first 2 commercial weather radar satellites. We will grow the constellation to about 30, hopefully, and what that will provide is coverage over everywhere in the world, including the oceans. That data will then feed into our products and our models, which AI certainly is a part of, so that we can even better predict and forecast and operationalize the weather for all industries globally. So that's a little bit about Tomorrow. Next slide, please. So to start talking about AI, I think it's important to put all of our cards on the table on the Tomorrow.io side. So despite all of those really amazing, lofty mission and goals that I just mentioned, in addition to the satellites, we are a very small, lean team here on the marketing side. So there are just 4 of us. I should say 5, because I think our fearless leader, Dan Slagan, if anyone's familiar with him, certainly plays a huge part here too. But in terms of actual headcount under leadership, it is only 4 of us. So again, in addition to launching a satellite, I mean, we have achieved amazing results. We've gone from Series B to Series E in 4 years. Most recently, yesterday, closed out our Series E funding, which is exciting. We've quadrupled our headcount, rebranded. We have supported 3 distinct sales channels and grown them along the way, are consistently featured in some of those logos of PR there, the different outlets. So certainly achieving amazing results. And I don't just say that to, brag and the exciting marketing stuff, but we definitely couldn't have done it without our superpower, which is AI. I'm biased. I would say it's because we're just the most amazing marketers ever. And I'll back that up. But in addition to that, we have from that start really embraced AI and specifically generative AI. We've used it from the get-go. We've hired someone in-house, which I'll speak about later, Ruth. She is our AI specialist. It really has allowed us to extend our impact in ways that we just wouldn't have been able to without it. So excited to dive into that more, but all to say we're a small team with AI at the helm, and we're achieving amazing results on the marketing side. So I think it's also for climate tech, AI is especially important and relevant and impactful as marketers because we can use it in our day-to-day operations in some of the ways I just mentioned in the previous slide, but also because it's embedded in so many of our products, including Tomorrow.io. So here on the right, you will see our latest feature. Its name is Gale. It is the world's first weather and climate generative AI assistant. It's very exciting. And it's really at the heart of our product in other ways too, in our forecasting models. And I'm sure for many of you, it's the same, whether it's a SaaS application or something else, AI, ML, it's a part of it. And so I think we're around it so much as climate tech marketers, Before we dive in though, and I just did some research myself, I think it's important to just lay out the types of AI that we're talking about. Mostly we're talking about generative with the new push in marketing, but there are other kinds. So just wanted to kind of review what those are as we then each speak of them. So first off, we have the most basic level from a capability standpoint, and that's just reactive machines. So this would be something like your Roomba, like a robot vacuum cleaner, or something that just responds to stimuli, really basic capabilities. From there, we then have limited memory AI. And this is the category that we all as marketers are talking about mostly. So this is where generative falls within, natural language processing. This is also where machine learning would fall. It's basically the category that can be trained on things, improves iteratively, but still, and it's important to remind ourselves, myself included, like doesn't have a deep understanding of the world and can't actually function as a human brain. And that's actually where we stop right now. So below that, there are, categories that are ambitious for us that we haven't reached yet. Theory of mind, this would be an actual AI that could understand human behavior intuitively. So this would hypothetically be something like an AI therapist that could at least understand and reflect human behavior. We're certainly not there yet. And then beyond that would truly be self-aware AI. So we're talking like C3PO, the Terminator. We're definitely not there yet, probably thankfully, but that would be like the ultimate level. So again, just to like lay that out, I think it's a good reminder that we still have a long ways to go. AI is amazing, but there are limitations, and we're just really at that limited memory step right now. And so we are using AI in the climate tech context in some important ways that I'll dive into in the future. But I would say, bottom line here is that what I've seen is that it's not just tomorrow we are using it for one certain use case, or there's one silver bullet application here. It's really looking at AI comprehensively and embedding it into our org in a holistic way. And yeah, I'm excited about it. Happy to be here. I could keep going forever, but I'll pass it to Megan and then we'll keep talking.
All right, hang on. I've got a few questions on your slide before we move on.
Please, yeah.
Okay, amazing. So first of all, amazing that you are an in-house marketer at a climate tech company, which is also an AI company. So you're like the perfect fit for this webinar. So I have a million questions, but one, in climate tech, a lot of us are really small teams, or we've only just started with the marketing. We might have dabbled with AI. Can you go into a little bit more detail, just tactically, how your team are using AI? Like, what are the different things you're using it for? Content, planning, just, yeah, I think you had it on your previous slide, but maybe you can just go.
Yeah.
Give us a few examples.
Sure, definitely. I would say primarily it's from an efficiency standpoint. To your point, we're a really small team, as many climate tech teams are. So it's mostly for things that are just rote continuous tasks at the very bottom level, like data analysis, for example, trying to form our own levels of attribution. It's really helped us on like the marketing operations side. Content creation, absolutely. I think we can all speak to this. We are far beyond where I could have imagined a year ago, just in terms of content volume, and the quality is increasing as we get better at prompting. So definitely that. We also use it in some strategic ways for market research. For example, we've had some success for outbound customizing, personalizing content at scale. For the climate specific stuff, I think it's interesting to mention, we have a ton of data for us around historical weather events. And before AI, it was just overwhelming. I'm sure other climate marketers could feel that, whether it be emissions data, whatever your product is. It was just so much, we didn't know what to do with it. Now we can plug that into Claude, for example, redacting what we need to. I'll speak to that in a bit. And now we can create these amazing data reports that would have taken so long in the past. So data analysis, certainly personalization, we using Bard can now go look at what companies are saying in their ESG impact reports publicly. And we can pull out different sustainability goals from those and then reflect that back in the outbound emails. That's been incredibly effective and just wouldn't have been realistic for a team of our size at scale in the past. So yeah, those are just some tactical examples. Again, I could absolutely continue on, but I truly can say we almost every task, we push ourselves to start with AI if at all possible. So we're using it every day, all day.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. And I love that personalization example. Me as like a demand gen geek. I just love
Yeah.
the possibility that has opened up for you. Okay, but on your slide, and you mentioned, you actually have an AI marketer on your team, Ruth. That's
We
just
do.
mind blowing. So tell us how this came about. Like, how did you decide to come up with that job description? And how, were you able to find someone quickly and what is their role?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been told she is the first or was the first AI marketer out there. So take that for what you will. We knew basically at the baseline that we needed someone to make an impact, which I understand, don't we all? It's very broad, but we're considering, content. I was kind of backfilling myself. When I really thought about what we wanted, it was someone who could keep us on the cutting edge of this thing AI at the time that we were starting to use and we knew was really powerful. So it was that we wanted kind of a marketing generalist in a way, but also specifically someone who was passionate about AI and could keep us on the forefront of it because we quickly saw how impactful it could be for us. So we went out and said, we want someone with traditional marketing skills, but also who can keep us as an organization, not just marketing, in line with what we need to be and keep up with the pace of AI. So she primarily, I would say right now, is responsible for content creation. She is using it for video. We have a really nice repurposing flow now that she will create a video and then with AI can just create other amazing pieces of content. But then at the organizational level, she is really at the helm of keeping us in as part of the AI revolution. So she's training other teams cross-functionally on how best to prompt. She led an AI hackathon for us. Other teams got involved. So it's a most important part of her role is being that AI leader.
Oh, that's amazing. Really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, moving on to Megan.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So yes, I'm Megan. Every time I hear Kelly speak, I'm just like stunned by that number of 4 marketers because I've seen the marketing that team has pulled off this year and they're everywhere. I think they may be 4 marketers, but I feel like they are cloned infinitely. So just awesome to have Kelly here talking about the actual use of AI and in practice and her team. What I'm going to talk with you a little bit about is the technology behind this, because many of you are going to have to make technology decisions for what tools you use, what language models as you sort of roll this out. So to give you a little bit of a background of where I come from and my perspective on that, I run marketing for Jasper, which is an AI co-pilot for marketing teams specifically. I think that, one of the unique things about Jasper is we're sort of purpose built for marketing. So instead of just producing kind of generic outputs, we can train on your brand and your voice, the details about your company or your agency, and make sure that your outputs are much more relevant, sound much more like you, are more authentic and accurate to what you create. And then because we're marketing geeks, all the bells and whistles of SEO optimization, plagiarism checkers, grammar, things like that, to be able to take a single piece of content and then turn it into a full end-to-end campaign in a single breath. So happy to talk about Jasper further, but that's the background I'm coming from. What I really want to talk about, regardless of the tools you choose, is sort of how to think about the technology that you rely on as you start to adopt AI. So that's on the next slide. So before I dive into these 5 points, I think it's worth a very quick primer on how generative AI works. So what happens is there are these large language models that will consume enormous amounts of content and information and sort of learns human patterns of speaking and communicating in that way. And then based on a prompt, they're able to sort of respond to that prompt in a natural way, learned off of patterns. I think the important thing to remember is that it's not actually intelligent. So it could write a beautiful article, but it's just laying words down on a page. You need to add in the research and the substance and the points behind that. I think that's really important to remember. But it's pretty powerful in what it can do. So that's sort of how it works. I think, this group is such an interesting, and this topic is such an interesting intersection because generative AI can do incredible things for our capacity and potential as organizations working to, address climate change, but also generative AI has a carbon footprint and it's pretty sizable. And so one of the things to think about is sort of responsible use of AI in that context of the larger mission. So that's kind of like a foundational, I think, in thinking about the tools you're going to want to pick. Number one, security and privacy. So different tools out there have different levels of security in them. So some tools, like if you're using, for example, like the free version of ChatGPT, anything you put into that tool will then go to train the model and could be accessed by other companies. So if you're putting client data in there or customer data in there or IP that you don't want released, there's a serious risk there to privacy. And then there's also risk to sort of corruption of prompt injection and corruption of the experience itself. In response to that, a number of tools now have set really high security standards, SOC 2 compliance, very strong kind of strict rules around that. You just want to make sure that you're asking those questions as you figure out what tools to use and don't just automatically use whatever you find on the internet. Secondly, I think it's important to think about brand adaptability. So as I mentioned, I think the biggest complaint that we hear about generative AI outputs is that they can sound pretty generic. And you've worked really hard as a marketer to build an impassioned and purposeful brand. You've got your style. You want to make sure that you select tools that can reflect that and not create this dissonant experience for your customers or clients. Third point here is around interoperability. I think that so that's a big word that's fun to say. What that means is there's all sorts of different language models, big ones, small ones, open source, closed source. There's OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, and you sort of have an option to, do I want to just put all my eggs into one language model, or do I want to be able to pull from the best of the best and operate between them? And I think that's there are benefits to doing one or the other, and I think that's worth kind of thinking through. For us, so Jasper operates across different models because we like the flexibility and the reliability of that. Multimodality is another key point here. That's, can your technology create text and images? And then finally, standards and ethics. You want to sit down as a company and define your standards for use, where you'll use AI, where you won't, your fail-safes for catching things like bias that may creep up in AI or inaccuracies. Make sure you're aligned on that as a company. Now, my final slide, I'll just touch very quickly on where AI is headed. So today, generative AI it can make you faster, right? That's the biggest magic trick that it does right now. Increasingly, more and more models are getting more secure. Increasingly, more and more models are able to reflect your brand. But it has these negatives of having a carbon footprint and also having inaccuracies and biases that you need to watch out for. Moving forward, this is developing very quickly. You'll see, greater efficiency, greater accuracy, analytics starting to show up in AI. And so I will say that, the AI 6 months from now is going to look very different than the AI today. So investing in, increasing the AI literacy across your team today is a good idea. I'll stop there for any questions.
Hi, awesome, Megan. Thank you so much to just give us a glimpse of one example of one of these tools that are out there. And yes, other AI tools exist. So thanks for also being very generic in your presentation. You mentioned brand, and it is so important to us as marketers. And Jasper has that capability, but how do you actually securely train an AI to then speak in line with your brand or in your brand tone,
Yeah.
tone of voice?
So we start with the foundation of a bunch of different language models, choosing the right one for the job at hand. And then we have a layer on top of that that enriches those outputs with what you've trained us about your company. So you will you can scan your website in Jasper and it'll pick up your brand voice, or you can upload like a style guide or a positioning document, upload information about your target customers or your competitive space, really all of the like intelligence about your company, you upload that into Jasper. And because of our security practices, none of that leaks through to the language models. It just stays in Jasper. You own it. It's protected. But we're able to leverage the power of those underlying models and combine that with the personalization and customization of your own brand.
Okay. And I assume it gets better over time. Like when you correct things and say, hey, this doesn't quite sound like us, say it this way. Will it remember?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I uploaded a speech that I gave that I liked to try to train it on my own voice, and it actually got really, really close. But then I would go back and say, okay, but in these settings, I want to be a little bit more humorous, and in these settings, make me sound cooler, and like you can tweak it.
Oh my God, as a German, an AI that writes jokes for me, that would just be like perfect. Okay. Quick final one. And this is also maybe for Kelly and for Brigitte. What do you see happening with teams that start using AI? How do they pivot? And as an agency owner, I need to ask this, what does that mean for agencies and freelancers?
Yeah. So what I would recommend is first have a conversation as a company about your standards. What do you feel good about using AI for? What do you not feel good about it? We have a policy inside Jasper that we will never, like no piece of AI only content should be published. Everything has to go through human editing, human input, all of those checks and balances. So that's our stance. And we actually put that like on our website. So I would find your use case, and you may want to start small. You may want to just say, hey, just for starters, I'm a one-person marketing team. I want to take the blog post that I wrote that I really like, and I want to turn it into a full-fledged campaign and repackage it, right? That's a very common, simple use case. But I'd find that use case and use that as the test for if it's valuable to you, and then expand out from there. As far as working with clients, I think that it's agencies in general have a lot to think about in terms of, hey, the way they package their services may need to change, but also there's lots of opportunity here. So I would try to be as transparent as possible with your clients, and then also show them like the ways that you're leveraging AI to get more value for them. I think we're all about to go through some serious shifts in the way that people discover and engage with organizations and companies. And so I think agencies can really lead the way in educating there.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd say on the agency freelancer side, as an actual in-house marketer, we're definitely still working with freelancers and agencies by all means. So we have taken more in-house at scale, I'd say. And I like what you said about setting expectations, Megan, because I think it applies here too. For example, in the past, when we worked with a freelancer, they would have handled our content brief, the outline, the full gamut. Now with AI, we actually are able to maybe do those things more quickly at scale. So just talking to them and saying, hey, our process has shifted a little bit. We actually are going to just handle the brief now. We will just want you to add in like the subject matter expertise, do the high touch strategic activities like that. And as a result, we have been able to move faster, I would say, with freelancers, and the output has ultimately been able to be more creative because we're taking more of that initial necessary but kind of like grunt work that we all know needs to happen. So yeah, I think just expectation setting, but we've seen the output be even better, I'd say.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Okay, I want to move on to Brigitte.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right. So quick intro about me. As Melanie said, I run a company named Lucita, which is a boutique firm that focuses on content marketing, communications, and art representation. Fun fact about me is that I worked with Google. I started in late 2016 to launch the Google Assistant, which some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. I was one of the Spanish and French writers because of my language capabilities. And I currently write a Substack about AI and human ingenuity and creativity. That's right there on the slide. There's a lot, what I'm about to tell you, I go deeper in on the Substack, so you can check that out. And I do want to give Bettina and Melanie a special shout out for organizing this panel, and to Kelly and Megan for their incredible presentations just now. So before I take you down these rabbit holes, you can go to the next slide actually. And Kelly, thank you for making my job easier, because now I can skip over some of this, but on a most basic level, AI can be categorized into two buckets: AI according to capability and AI according to functionality. You see that on the left. And it looks kind of scary when you look at all this, but I'm going to make it really, really simple. And as Kelly said, general AI is still under construction. Super AI is the stuff of fantasy. Theory of mind and self-aware AI, all of that is the stuff of fantasy at this point. That leaves us pretty much in the real world with narrow AI, reactive machines, and limited memory machines. So, in other words, all the AI operating in the world today is narrow AI that has limited memory, if any, and it is one that reacts to our prompts and inputs. It's not conscious, it doesn't think for itself, and it doesn't daydream about sprouting human legs one day. So the Siris and the Google Assistants and the Alexas, the recommendation engines for movies, books, and food, autonomous driving software, game playing AI, speech and image recognition, and generative AI, all of that is narrow AI. Now, on the right side, what you see are the components of an AI system. So in other words, neural networks enable what's called deep learning, which is in turn a subset of machine learning, and that's concerned with accuracy and pattern recognition. Then there's computer vision, which is used in car cameras and other image recognition systems. And what we're concerned about in generative AI is natural language processing, which is the software that parses human language, whether spoken or written. And then when Kelly uses it with her team, that's what enables that computer to translate those words into machine commands. Next slide, please. Now, I imagine we've talked about Megan mentioned this, the inaccuracy, the errors or hallucinations, and the poor quality content. In a way, it's nothing compared to what I'm about to talk about here. There are four main issues, four main challenges and considerations. First up, we have that messy, thorny issue of bias, and that shows up in a number of different ways. It occurs when AI generates systemically prejudiced output, which is due to faulty assumptions in the training data sets. So racial bias, I would say, is probably the most ubiquitous. This occurs when facial or image recognition systems have a hard time recognizing or distinguishing darker skinned people in particular. And that's because a lot of the training sets are largely populated by images of fairer skinned or white people. In speech recognition, this also happens. So voices with regional accents, especially those of people of color or immigrants, are not as well recognized by AI tools. And I can personally speak to this because I've used Otter.ai for when I do interviews of customers for my clients. And then you look at the transcript, and the people who are either immigrants, they have their own small businesses, the transcript is not as good, and you have to spend a lot more time cleaning it up. Then there's gender bias, which comes into play when you ask for an image of a scientist and then all the iterations of that are men, or you ask for an image of a teacher and all the iterations are women. Then another one is disability bias, which is probably the least talked about. Here, the triggers are things like, different facial features or hand gesture differences, speech impairment, and assistive devices, which some of the AI systems don't recognize. And the bad thing about this is that all of these types of bias result in real world, real life consequences, like fewer or denied professional opportunities if you have AI filters looking at resumes. There's amplification of harmful social attitudes. There's outright discrimination, false arrests, such as with the image recognition stories that you've probably heard about, and even fatal accidents if, for example, a car system doesn't recognize a pedestrian. Challenge number 2 is data sourcing. We just talked about bias, right, which is a problem in the data sets. The second issue in the data sets is that so much of it has been sourced from copyrighted work without notification, consent, credit, or compensation to the creators. Keep in mind, this is very different than the case with Kelly's company, for example, or a company that has its own walled garden of data. I'm talking about the general OpenAI ChatGPT Bard. Now, over 90% of ChatGPT 3's training data is in the English language. This means that non-English content, and by default, non-English or Western cultures, attitudes, norms, the modes of expression are not represented in the data, and therefore they're not represented in the outputs. Third, this is probably the most disturbing one to me personally, is what I call the fast fashion of AI. These are the data labeling sweatshops. This pertains especially to image data sets, which are painstakingly, laboriously labeled by hand by low-wage workers in countries like Kenya, India, Venezuela. And actually, anybody, any of you who raise your hand if you've ever filled out a CAPTCHA, you know, like check off the squares that have traffic lights. We have all helped to train the AI algorithms. Next slide, please. All right, now environmental footprint. This is challenge number 3, and this is particularly important for those of us who work in climate tech and climate marketing. So as you can see here, the energy and water utilization are considerable, especially when you compare it to older technologies. So a generative AI query uses 5 to 8 times the energy of a Google search. This alone tells you, hey, maybe it's not such a good idea to use ChatGPT for search. Maybe you do Google and then use, you know, the generative AI for something else, for like automation. Every 20 to 50 prompts you send to ChatGPT, you're basically dumping the equivalent of a bottle of water on the ground. Now, when you add to that the large data centers in drought-prone states like here in California that use enough water that could serve entire cities, you're really starting to look at potential conflict, harm to communities, and a lot less water available to those communities. Okay, on to challenge number 4, which has, in my experience anyway, driven the strongest opinions, the most fierce Senate testimony, and backlash from across the entire creative world. Now, at this point, it's common knowledge that the words and images used to train the general generative AI systems were scraped from the internet without notice, without consent, credit, or compensation to the creators, and without any regard to copyright. So what's happening now is that even especially well-known artists and musicians are seeing their brands drowned in search results. This has happened in particular to a gentleman named Greg Rutkowski, who's a well-known artist, digital illustrator, and he's had his name used in prompts, I think like 400,000 times or something. Their names are, so like I said, their names are used in prompts. Their incomes and livelihoods are actually now being impacted. The big bold numbers you see there, the 11,500, the 65,000 and the 10,000 authors plus, those are the writers and the actors striking, the artists opting their images out of generative AI. All that, these are telling a very loud story. And I want to be clear that it's not the technology that we creators are protesting, it's the ways that other humans are training and using these AI tools that's threatening to upend creators' professional identities, their value of the work, their livelihoods. And if you really think about it, it's the very dynamics and relationships between creators, producers, marketers, and funders, right? The investors, the executives, that have driven the innovation and creativity since the first clay tablets were stamped in Sumer. So I'll leave it there as I'm probably out of time and happy to, you know, get into this more. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Brigitte. Indeed, you've opened up a lot of rabbit holes for us here, but it's so important because we all in climate, you know, we claim to be mission driven and we have high ethical standards, but we can't just turn a blind eye to some of these challenges and just focus on the climate, especially with the inherent impact on environmental costs that AI is causing, but also all the other things you mentioned. So, but this is not, you know, obviously we got all excited and now you put a bit of a damper on it, but we don't want it to be all doom and gloom. We want to be measured here. So I guess my question is, bearing all of that in mind that you've just shared with us, how can people still start using or trying AI with these things in mind?
Yeah.
Of like a measured approach.
Right, exactly. I would like to, first of all, highlight Kelly and her team and the way that they've, it seems that they've certainly been very intentional and efficient about it. So I commend them on that for sure. In general, I would say, there's that saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Now, this doesn't have to be an either or question. I would say that for anyone considering generative AI, is take that important step of learning not just how it works and what it does, but also these less talked about, but still pretty fundamental considerations, right, that I just discussed. So it's very tempting to just jump right in and start pumping out content. But if you think about it, if you're a climate tech company and your mission is to mitigate the impacts of climate change, does it make sense for you to use a technology that relies on water-hungry data centers in the desert and that has a carbon footprint this big? And I'm not saying don't use any of it, right? I'm saying like look at what Kelly's team has done. Be considerate of the humans whose work is making it all possible. Like Megan said, we don't release any AI that's just out there without any human input. So use it with your eyes wide open. I also think that we might need to rethink the way we do marketing in general, because it's up to us to lead the market since we're marketers rather than the market's leading us. So in other words, maybe you really don't need mountains of social content every month. Maybe you get more strategic and targeted about how and where you market. And so this is what I'm advising our clients, in fact, is, look outside that box a little bit more, look outside that data center a little bit more, and we're seeing it working. So that's what I would say.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Love that leveled approach. And I think it's a great segue to open up the Q&A to the panel. So I'm going to ask a few more questions, but I really encourage the audience. I'm sure you'll have some burning questions. Now's the time to put them in the chat. If you haven't already, we'll be monitoring them. And then after another round of 1 or 2 questions each, we'll just, open up the floor. So,
Bettina, so there was a question from Brandon, and he was asking about, and I think this, and some other people were also asking the same question, and I saw Kelly, Megan, you also gave some suggestions, but opening it up here, are there beginner courses that, are there indeed foundational aspects that that they should learn about? Any advice on how might proceed to advance skills? So if anyone is, started testing, are there second level, third level advanced classes that they can be taking?
great question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can reshare kind of where I was pointing. I mean, I think this is also a great opportunity to, point to you all at Alder Co. And some of the resources that you put together to help people get started in thinking about this. So I would definitely point to that. Maybe you can share a link to that as well. I also find that the Marketing AI Institute is pretty helpful. They've got a bunch of online courses, resources that you can tap into. And then we certainly each individual tool will have its own kind of academy and curriculum to sort of help you get the most out of it. Jasper's got one as well, but I would start with the sort of strategy side before you even think through the tools.
Yeah, if anyone missed it, Megan, you should repost the Notion doc that you just sent.
Oh, sure,
It's
yeah.
an incredible doc hosted by Jasper, created by Jasper, that has prompts for basically every marketing activity you could think of. I just shared it with our team after you sent it. It's amazing.
Cool.
I can speak, yes, and you totally second everything you just said and the resources you mentioned. From a team perspective, I'd say what we found to work is giving people time and encouraging them to dedicate, let's say, on Fridays, an hour to just explore new tools and tinker and ask questions and connect with people on LinkedIn and do informational chats. I mentioned also we did a hackathon internally. That has really been great because it's brought us together cross-functionally, which is important. So in addition to obviously finding the right tools and playing around with them, I would just say on our side, it's been a really continuous team effort, and that's been important in keeping us on the cutting edge.
There's also a newsletter that I subscribe to. It's called There's an AI for That. So it's written by ChatGPT, I think. I can dig out the link, or it's literally, if you Google There's an AI for That, every week it sends you a list of new tools. And then it's also like a resource where you can just look, oh, I'm sure something must exist that does X. And then you go on that website and yes, you'll find that AI that's exactly that thing that you're looking for.
And I also put into the chat 2 resources. One is Ethically Aligned AI in Canada. That's a colleague of mine named Katrina Ingram. She runs that. You can get a micro credential in ethics for AI, which is great. And then Women in AI Ethics, which is womeninaiethics.org, I believe. You can look that up. And there's a whole directory, and it is literally just women working in AI ethics. It's a great resource.
Okay, awesome. And along those lines, for those of us or of you who lead teams, how do you think about your own skills and also how you evolve the skills in your team? Like, what do you recommend? I guess, looking into the next 6 months, 12 months, do the typical job descriptions for marketers change? How are you thinking about that whole scenario?
Yeah, I would say that as evidenced by us bringing on a dedicated AI marketer, we encourage, and if we get open headcount, I would expect people to have a level of AI competency and excitement, enthusiasm for it, and embracing it, whatever that tool might be, that they're comfortable with seeking out new tools. So I'd say certainly just encouraging people and expecting new people to have a competency with it and excitement around it, like I said. And then also just really pushing everyone to use it, of course, but then really like make big swings after that and like think more strategically. So I'm saying to my team, like, use AI, of course, as you can for the content creation responsibly, and then think big. Like now, because we're using AI, that allows us to like free up our time and think of projects we never would have in the past. And I think like as a team of 4, it can be tempting to like think narrowly, just given our size. So yeah, just like reminding people that as a result of this new amazing technology, we can do really cool big projects. We just made a 30-minute documentary, and without AI and the encouragement of Dan Slig and our CMO, like I wouldn't have let my brain even think there. So yeah, as a skill set, it's like thinking bigger because we can.
Awesome. All right, moving on to some of the other questions from the audience. Can you give an example of more strategic marketing using AI versus volume when thinking about carbon footprint?
So I can talk a little bit about that. So what I'm thinking is, and this is what we talk about with our clients all the time, depending on the kind of clients and customers that you have. For some of our clients, and I've told them this, it doesn't make any sense for them to try and get millions of followers on social media. That's just not where their customers and partners are. So I said to them, why don't you focus more on thought leadership? Go, because their customers are higher net worth individuals or companies or enterprises. So you really have to look at the human story that you're trying to tell. It's not always about volume. And so some companies might not really need to care so much about SEO content because, like, for example, one of our clients, who's in fintech, we generated all this blog content, and that was prior to ChatGPT. That was a couple of years ago. And we found through analytics that nobody's actually reading these blog posts, and we kept turning them out. So what I did was I said, why don't you start telling human stories about your customers? And I started a program called Meet the Merchant for this particular POS provider. And that provided content, obviously, not only for the blog that was a lot more engaging because people would prefer to read stories about humans than stories about, devices that they're marketing. And it also gave them material for their salespeople to go out there into the field and say, hey, this is a story about a person just like you. So it's that human connection that I think we cannot lose sight of.
Bettina, I think that's actually, so not only is that kind of a better kind of content, if you think about SEO and the way that SEO is changing in the coming year, there's further validation there, right? So Google has passed last year passed an algorithm change called the Helpful Content Update, which really cracked down on content farms and high volume content. And they put out very strict and specific guidance on how they would reward content that has actual authority and expertise and rare, unique angles associated with it. So our SEO lead, content strategist, a woman named Krista Doyle, she talks about this as shifting from how-to content to how-I content. And so she's taking the time that she saved on producing the content and reinvesting it into doing outreach to find original interviews or conducting research on her own to make the content break through in an age where high volume content will become commoditized.
Wow. Okay, how do you assess the security and privacy standards of any given tool?
Yeah, I could speak to this one, but feel free to jump in. So a few buzzwords I would have you keep in mind. One is you'll want to look to make sure that it's SOC 2 compliant, SOC 2. Usually the tools will say that right on their website, or you might be able to find it in the terms of service. Jasper is. You want to look for things like GDPR compliance. If you are healthcare, you want to look for things like HIPAA compliance. And that's a good start. It's just sort of looking for those keywords. But then when you're actually talking with or signing up for the technology, ask the question of, hey, how is my data used to train the model? Does it get passed through? Do I have control over that? What kind of security features are built in?
Okay, that's great. And I think related to that, another question was, how serious are the copyright issues with generative AI? How do I know if what the AI produces isn't illegally used?
Should I jump in on this one? So I've been following this actually a lot. There have been a lot of copyright lawsuits. So it turns out that there was, just to give you one very specific example, a young artist who used AI to generate a comic book, and then she applied to the US Copyright Office to gain copyright for that. They denied it, saying, you didn't actually create this comic book, it was AI. It was AI generated. And then she has done multiple lawsuits trying to get the US Copyright Office to bend, and they're like, no, sorry, this is not human generated. Turns out that her lawyer was subsidized by Midjourney, which caused a big scandal because that's a conflict of interest, right? So that's on the human side. I mean, leave it to humans to muck things up. AI is innocent. It just does what we want it to do. But so now the US Copyright Office has opened it up to the public, and I've submitted my comment. They want to know how do creators feel about copyright? And to answer your question is, existing copyright law was not ready for AI, because you can't say that, if Kelly produces a blog post or any piece of content, and then one of my books is in the data training sets, that's not direct plagiarism, right? Because my characters didn't end up in her blog post. Because what the LLMs do is it's kind of like, imagine when you eat food, you digest it. What comes out is very different than what you've eaten, right? So I'm sorry for that, but that's how LLMs work, basically, right? So you cannot apply copyright law to what's going on now. So that those structures, those legal frameworks need to change. And of course, again, leave it to humans. Certain companies are using that chaos to their advantage. Certain creators are using it to their advantage. And it's the squeakiest wheels that are getting all the press, right? But basically, I don't think you need to be worried about copyright if you're pulling output from an AI and then reworking it so that it has your human touch. I think
therein lies the key. Take it with a pinch of salt, rework it.
Right, exactly. But again, we need to go deeper down that rabbit hole and say, where is the data the training data, where is that being pulled from? Like I would,
All right, Brigitte.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I know you have so much knowledge and it's incredible. Please go and check out Brigitte's blog. It's a real wealth of resource and insight on that topic. I want to sort of carry on from that thought, volume seems to be the theme here, that's for certain. You can create as much blog posts or whatever as you can, but what happens if content becomes commoditized? As marketers, what becomes important instead? Sort of as a final question to the panel. How can we differentiate ourselves?
Yeah, I can kick this off. I'd say to validate that the question even being asked, absolutely. We're feeling like certainly quality creative content with a human touch is incredibly valuable still, but it's no longer the differentiator that it was a year ago, or at least not it alone. So I feel like really the power has been given back to the people in a way. And it really comes down to making the human connection clear out of the gate. I'll give you an example that just happened on our team this week. We created a really nice piece of content using a number of different AI tools from a video, chopped it up, repurposed it. The content was great. I feel like a year or two ago, we would have sent that out, would have gotten attention, got a little bit of engagement on email, not much on social. And our guy on the government team, our BD lead, said, hey, I sent this email out this week, included some similar content, and it got really good responses. Take a look. And what he did was he said, I'm a semi-retired meteorologist, which he is in Western Massachusetts, Ed Carroll, if anyone lives there. And I'm at this new company. It's a tech company. I'm learning all about weather, and they have this AI stuff, but ultimately I'm an old meteorologist. Here's some clips of me when I was on TV. Check out the content. Do you want to talk? And leading with that got the best response rates I think we've seen all quarter. And so now at the same time that we are really encouraging our team, as I've said a million times, like use AI as much as possible, we're also going to the rest of our team and saying, hey, what were you doing before this role? What do you do outside of work? What are the pieces of human connection, those gems that we can lead with to then get people to the great high quality content that we're producing with AI? But it's such an interesting juxtaposition. Now we're finding out more about the human side of my coworkers than I've ever known. And it's what's actually getting the attention, at least from the distribution standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I love that. Anyone else? Megan, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kelly said it really well. I think that in an age when informational content is commoditized, the things that will rise up, because whenever marketing is always a continuum and, and a pendulum at that, brand, being a breakthrough original brand, community. So activating the influencers in your network, and connecting through community, those are going to become more influential in a time where there's just tons of how-to content out there.
I love that.
If I can just add one quick thing, I completely agree about the craft and quality of the original stories and human connection, the relationships and all that. On the brand side, what we're starting to see is companies are getting more and more backlash when they use AI without the proper context, without telling people, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. Case in point, Levi Strauss wanted to use AI to generate body inclusive model images instead of hiring those plus size models or the body diverse models. They got a lot of backlash for that because they used AI, and people are saying, hey, you're putting these, you're basically discriminating against the very people that you're trying to uphold. And so if you're going to do that, you have to do it a little bit more intentionally. Include those models in that project somehow. Don't just make it.
Okay, now we're coming to the favorite part of these webinars. If you've been on one of them before, we call it the quick fire question round, and it's for the panelists, but also for the audience. So I'm going to shoot off a question, and then all the panelists are just going to shoot off their answers quickly. And please play along in the chat, put your answers in the chat. It's always a lot of fun. Are you ready, panelists? Okay. Okay, give me an example of a prompt gone wrong.
You want me to start? I can start.
Yeah.
I one time was really riding on Jasper. I was asking it to do again and again and again, and at some point Jasper just responded, "I'm tired."
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Kelly?
This is actual AI for personal use. I recently visited Yellowstone National Park. I was asking it to help me plan, and in my prompt, I didn't put Yellowstone as one word. It immediately was giving me ways to like do geology 101, basically, instead of planning a trip to Yellowstone. It was awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
On my end, so the other fun fact about me is I serve as a chocolate judge, like an actual, international chocolate awards. And so I said, let's see what ChatGPT knows about chocolate history. And so I had it put together a quiz for me, and it gave me really great questions. And I go, this is great. Now give me the teacher's master key. And when it did that, I realized most of its answers were wrong. So there's that.
Okay. All right, next. Finish the sentence for me. I wish AI could ...
Pick up the piles of laundry on my floor every single day.
Yep, I would say plan events, marketing, absolutely. It's helped me organize some things for marketing events, but can't actually plan them. And then I would also apply it to my wedding, which I'm a terrible planner. I've done nothing for, so that'd be great.
I wish AI could wash the dishes, get the groceries, and do my laundry, all the domestic stuff, so I can focus on writing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it won't take too long for those little robots to come around. Okay. Do not use AI for ...
Original thought, your strategy, things that require lived experience and judgment. It's missing that, and it will never have it.
Yeah, I would just say basically anything without human oversight. I'm thinking of using it initially to try to craft personalized messages and thinking, maybe we just send them out, and then you look and realize it's hallucinated and made something up about our prospect entirely. So nothing without human oversight.
I would say don't use it for personal conversations. It's not a living thing. It's not a therapist. It's not going to be your friend or girlfriend or boyfriend. I think that's a very dangerous place to go.
I did actually ask her to write my Mother's Day card, and then I felt awful afterwards and rewrote it. Okay. All right, finish the sentence and then we're done. The most random thing I've used AI for is...
I often go down a rabbit hole with AI. So I'm also I like to write in my spare time as well with Bettina, and I'm working on a collection of essays. And I just was doing like a little bit of research on spider webs for surprisingly. And I just woke up like 20 minutes later and I was down deep in a rabbit hole about spider webs and their resilience.
Awesome. I've used it to cooking, which might not sound so random, but I absolutely am no cook. So to me, that was like wild. So yeah, use it for cooking.
This is a tough one. I would say probably the very first thing I asked ChatGPT when it first came out, and that was, okay, ChatGPT, who's a better writer, humans or AI? And it, promptly said, oh, no, humans rule. I'm not a good writer. That's what it said.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that. Mel, I think I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right. Well, just want to say thank you for everyone, panelists. Thank you for being here. We have learned so much today from you, and I really appreciate your time and talking with us at Alder and Tofu and our community. Bettina and I are available if anyone wants to brainstorm ideas on marketing strategy for climate tech. We are available. Just email us at hello@alderagency.com. And we look forward to hearing your stories and how you're using AI in the future. So keep in touch with us on Tofu, and that's climatefortofu.com.